Hello and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is presented by Asher Agency, your all-in-one marketing partner, serving clients across the nation. For further details, check out asheragency.com.
My guest is Greg Shields. Greg, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I especially appreciate it because I know you have a busy life. You have a new addition to your family and navigating all of that. But it sounds like that's been a great thing for you so far.
Oh, it's a blessing. Yeah, absolutely. I very grateful to work remote so that I can help be a stay-at-home dad and a full-time employee. So it's working out for me so far.
Yeah. 2026 is a great time to be alive. That flexibility is super important. So remind me, where are you in Michigan?
It's now. Originally from Fort Wayne. Yeah, I lived in Fort Wayne for 30 years, and then I just recently moved to Grand Rapids.
Okay, I've heard great things. I've been to Grand Rapids, spent time there only once, have been through it a million times, but I hear great things and sounds like a great place for you to land.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it's so wild growing up in Indiana and having this gigantic body of water, i.e. Lake Michigan, so close by that I never would have thought. It's truly like being out at the sea, and the beaches are just as nice. You can only access it though for an enjoyable amount of time for about 3 to 4 months of the year. But when it's there, it's incredible. So
I love Grand Haven, tent camping at Grand Haven and being able to walk downtown. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Oh yeah, dude, you're speaking to the crowd, man. I love it. And Western Michigan in general is it's unlike anything else.
Yeah. I will definitely have to come visit sometime and take advantage of all the good things you're talking about. Well, you mentioned that you originally spent a lot of time in Fort Wayne. Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah, born and raised. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you were originally thinking about in terms of careers. You're significantly younger than me. So there's a chance as a kid you were saying, I want to be a digital marketer, but maybe that wasn't the case. What were you thinking about career-wise when you were young, and where did you go from there?
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but I was so against wanting to do anything sales related. And again, I didn't know that this would eventually evolve to like what I'd be doing for a career now, but I knew that I didn't want to be in sales. But so I originally went to school out of high school. I went to Indiana Tech for a year. And while I was there, I played lacrosse and I was a full-time employee. I probably had like 30 to 35 hours working at Pizza Hut at the time. Yep. And that became too much. And I went there originally to pursue a degree in mechanical engineering. And then also I was like really big on wanting to do interior design. I watched a lot of HGTV growing up. Yeah. So I was like, that sounds like a really cool thing. Yeah. And then I was good enough at math, but not strong enough in order for me to make engineering be like my strong suit. Yep. So I pivoted. And then I went to IPFW and did 3 years there. Didn't finish my career or finish my college degree. Don't show my dad this. He'll hate me because he's to this day, he's like, all you need to do is get your Spanish and you'll be done. And I'm like, I get it. Yeah. So I went to IPFW and I studied intercommunications or intercultural communications. Again, with the anticipation that maybe I could pivot to doing broadcasting. Everyone said, hey, you got a great voice for broadcasting. I was like, and I got the face for it too. So that didn't really pan the direction I wanted to do. I met someone, his name was Kevin Stoller, and he was a great influence for me. And it led me to think that there might be an opportunity for me to do do communications within a business setting. I really wanted to possibly be a spokesperson. Like that was like a really cool thing for me. Yeah. I don't know if those careers really exist that much more or that much in the real world anymore, and probably within big corporations. But so that was sort of my career path.
So you didn't know, but you were open to possibilities.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah. So how did you land in the digital marketing world? Because if your LinkedIn profile is accurate, which I'm sure it is, it looks like your first job in your career path was in that field, right?
It's so odd how I got here. So
was it he's young, he must know digital marketing, let's put him in a job, he has no experience in. Yeah.
Truthfully, it really was. So at the time I was a senior at IPFW and I was working at Best Buy. And again, talk about like, I didn't want to do sales, but this seemed like it was the only direction I was headed. And like with a communications background, you're kind of leaning yourself more and more into sales. So I just naturally was like, well, I'll do Best Buy. And while I was there, I was helping put together a kitchen package for someone. And she was like, do you know anything about international business? And I was like, I was literally at the time studying 1 semester course about international business. And I had no business saying yes. But I was like, oh, of course, yeah, I do. And so Mrs. Coffee, she was like, I need to introduce you to my husband. So John and his best friend, C-Mob, who are both IBFW graduates, were forming effectively a drop ship company and also a manufacturing and service out of Fort Wayne for outdoor furniture. And I was just like, yeah, I can figure this out. And this was like pretty early on into digital marketing, as far as like in its like you were still taking Google Analytics courses to get certifications to kind of like build your repertoire. So that's where I got my start, was having one conversation with somebody at Best Buy, kind of fibbing about what I know, and got myself into a position to at least start to learn it. And they treated it like an internship more or less for me. And eventually I just kind of gave myself the title, which I used more or less to get myself into other interviews further down the line. So that was sort of the start of it all.
Well, and I think there's a couple good lessons there. And tell me if I'm hitting this right. But, I'm obviously a big believer in formal education, but I'm equally aware that there's other paths you can take, right? Especially in today's environment, that if you have experience and if you can maybe luck your way into some experience, that's going to serve you better than a degree with no experience, right? Where you just learned it theoretically.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, no matter what you're going to college for, you're going to have opportunities. It's what you do with those opportunities. And it could be people you meet, it could be events you go to, or whatever the case might be. I still think that there's value in a higher education, so long as that you're making the most out of what you're getting there. Obviously, anyone will tell you that, but I do feel like that's certainly a truth that I would agree to.
Yeah. So you parlay that experience into some work in the agency world, correct?
I did. That was the next chapter of figuring it out. So again, that was like, to speak a little bit about like, if I could have and I would have known about it, I would have. At the time when I was in college, the only real colleges that were educating people on digital marketing, because otherwise you had to go take courses yourself through Google's Academy and stuff, were like business schools in Washington, not like IPFW in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So you really were kind of, if you were interested in this, you had to learn it yourself. So there was a school or sort of a school. It's like an academy in Fort Wayne that was run by Into the Wild Marketing, who's a subsect of Big. And they had put together a program that was geared for teaching high school students digital marketing practices. And I forget how I had heard about it, but I had gone into like an interview with the anticipation of like, hey, I just really want to learn from your guys' program, and B, if it leads me to a job opportunity, even better. So I went there and did sort of like a mock interview process. I went through their trainings with the anticipation that like I would graduate from this academy and become like a candidate for working there. Unfortunately, I wasn't accepted into the role at the agency there, but one of the people who left Into and started working at Ferguson Advertising was Jenny Culp, and she knew about that program. So on the bottom of my resume, I put Google Ads certification, Facebook certification, and graduate from this particular Into the Wild Marketing. So again, I was grateful to have found this random experience that offered me the opportunity to get in on the ground floor with the marketing agency. But that was sort of where it all started for me, was finding that particular channel through Into.
Yeah. And your experience is very familiar. Our digital marketing team at Asher, I think that all of them were self-taught in digital marketing, because you're right. Colleges and universities were slow to get to that content. We're now seeing, people who come to us equipped with degrees that are relevant, but for a long time, we had folks like Dave Good, who has a radio background, our former director of digital. I think he was a Russian history major. So, it was the people like you who had the initiative and the interest to say, I'm going to figure this out, even though I'm not getting paid to do it yet, or I'm going to, fake it until I can make it, for want of a better term, but learn really quickly. And that's changing, but you're smart to go get the practical experience and use that to kind of level up down the line. So, Greg, how do you end up at the place you're at now, Seven Sons? We'll talk about Seven Sons in a minute, but how does that come together?
So I got in at the ground level at the Ferguson agency, and I was a digital analyst, and I was ready to make my next move. And so I got into an interview, and I met with Andrew Lamping at Cyclone, and Andrew took a shot on me. So then I became like the I oversaw our digital media buying over at Cyclone, which kind of evolved into a role where I assumed like a director of digital marketing role, where I was overseeing everything as far as like ad creative went, to ad placement, to website design and CRO. And then eventually I wanted the next part of my career, which was to go more in-house as opposed to agency level.
Yeah.
So my route to do that was I left Cyclone, went freelance. When I had made it, I was really grateful that Andrew and I kind of struck a deal and understanding that I could keep Seven Sons as a client after I left the agency. And that was great, because that was the end goal, was like leave the agency, work freelance for a little while, build more trust with Seven Sons, get hired by Seven Sons full time. So that was literally the trajectory of how I got to Seven Sons. And my role since then has kind of evolved while being at the being in-house at Seven Sons.
Yeah. So what was interesting to you about Seven Sons? Why was that a place you want to land?
So as a digital marketer, and specifically growth marketing, my one of my goals was to manage bigger budgets. It's fun to manage lots of clients, but it's even more fun to really think strategically about when you're working within bigger budgets. And at the time, while I was at Cyclone Social, there was like chattering of Seven Sons possibly coming to, like, we could pitch them. And I was like, wow, this could be a big hit for us. Like, this is a really big fish there. I mean, I have been hearing stories about how good their email marketing was and how they were like, their acquisition was kind of blowing up, and they had just come off of the 2020 boom. So I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. And we had gotten the opportunity to pitch them. I had this ace up my sleeve. At the time, there was like this method you could do with Facebook ads. You could like publish an ad ID and then copy the ad ID, and you could build lots of social proof on it. So I used that as my golden ticket. I was like, this is exactly what I do for you guys. So that was sort of how it all came together. Was they were looking for an agency partner. I've since then met like other partners that they had interviewed at like conferences, and like they're big names, like, and they're like names that get recognition and are keynote speakers at conferences. So I can hang my hat proud that I had beaten out some of these guys.
Well, I'm impressed that, all this planning, it seems like it worked really well. I'm going to have to take some advice from you, because you have a lot of good things figured out. So I want to talk a little bit about Seven Sons, and I disclosed before we hit record, I'm a big fan of Seven Sons. I had watched one too many documentaries about how factory farms are killing us, and I said, okay. And Greg, I'll disclose, I do everything within my power to eat as unhealthy as I can, but occasionally a good opportunity comes my way to change that, and if it's convenient, even better. And I looked at Seven Sons. I was like, okay, literally right down the road. It's local, which has a lot of benefits. Definitely going to be a better choice from a health standpoint, and they bring it to your door. What's not to like? And have been a customer ever since I first tried it. And maybe one of the things that impressed me the most was their digital marketing. So kudos to you. That once I kind of spoke that into the universe, it was inevitable that I was going to buy something, because the digital marketing was all over me. So explain, if you don't mind, how you describe what Seven Sons is to those who maybe don't know that much about it.
Yeah. Thank you for being a customer first and foremost, man. That's awesome. I would say that we are effectively a meat subscription brand that is geared to replace what you're getting at the grocery store with something you truly can trust. And that comes from the history of the brothers themselves and why they even started regeneratively farming. And I can kind of speak to that too. It's like, the farm itself kind of was a necessity. Like what they were doing beforehand was more traditional farming. It wasn't like, hey, let's foster the land and really take to the stewardship of our animals. It was because their mom's health started to kind of take a turn for the worse that they had started looking inwardly at like, what are we consuming and how can we change this? Because it was a very, I think her issues pertain to her gut and things like that. So the goal was like, let's just change what we're eating. And that was a huge milestone breakthrough for them. And honestly, I think that if you ask, and you've been to one of the farm tours you had told me before, and it's really impressive to see just like the lengths it goes to at the farm to bring you something you truly can trust. And there's nothing more impressive than having 7 brothers still work on the same family farm under different hats and things that there's so much trust and built up value from not only from the product standpoint, but from the people who are bringing it to you at Seven Sons. And I'm very grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll mention this to those who are listening to this episode. If you ever have the opportunity to take a farm tour, and I'll admit, before the tour, I had no idea what regenerative farming was, probably couldn't have even spelled that phrase, but really opened my eyes to why it's a better way. And the fact that they tell such a great story. They did talk about their mom on the tour and all the things that precipitated their pivot to regenerative farming. It's just a great story, and the fact that it's local is a nice bonus. And as I mentioned, the fact that they make it convenient is great too. I've even gifted Seven Sons meat to family members because I'm like, this to me is a no-brainer. For those who are looking for a downside, it costs a little more, but when you consider the long-term costs of eating meat that's not really good for you, it's an investment, right? So I applaud everything they're doing and your role in it. It's really a great story.
Absolutely. No, it's funny. We have an expression that I like to use that I've like at the farm. We try to not have really edgy ads. We lean heavily into founder-led stuff and the heritage of the brand. But I've always wanted to push some content that's like pay your farmer, not your pharmacist. And that expression exists. And like we've talked about making ads out of that expression before. And who knows, you might see it sooner than later. But
all right. Well, listeners, don't steal that phrase. That's great. Yep, take it. Yeah.
Please.
No, I love that. And it's true, right? I think there's been a trend towards people being more health conscious, hopefully. But it's so easy to make a lesser decision. It's just so easy to do what you've always done. And, I really applaud the family for educating people and taking time to tell the story in a way that I think can resonate. So it's an uphill battle, but certainly I think it's a great story and one that can cut through the clutter.
Absolutely. Oh, it truly does. I will say that, again, I know this is a podcast interview that's geared around marketing and what that takes. And if you want to, I can pivot to sort of like some of the messaging that's worked for us and sort of like what my role has kind of evolved to, because we're saying right now, and those who are unfamiliar, like Anthony lives near the farm, which is great. And we service, I think that it's about 90 to 95% of our business is done through e-commerce. So like we have a farm store, we have customers who live in and around the farm in the Huntington area. But yeah, largely speaking, we're targeting people who live all across the country, minus Alaska and Hawaii. So bringing this message across the country has been, it's an interesting one, especially too, if you look at some of our ads, you would think like, why would I in California care about this farmer who lives in Indiana sort of scenario? But I'd be happy to tell you more about that too.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear that. And one of the things I'll say to piggyback on that is I've rarely seen a brand that is so literally of the earth and so good at digital marketing, right? It's like you can have it both ways. You can be authentic. You can have mud on your boots. You can do things in sort of an old-fashioned way and still market the hell out of it. And that's what's fascinating to me. So yeah, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about how your career has evolved and how the messaging has evolved alongside that.
It's funny, you kind of just pointed right to what I think has made the brand so successful for such a long time. And it's kind of allowed us to create this scalable baseline within our marketing, specifically for acquisition, is that I had in order to win the trust of the brothers, I was like, I need to find out what's working, because we got the bid at Cycle and Social. And I was like, well, what's content that I think will resonate with people who are trying to find a brand, not only for what they trust, but to replace what they're eating or switch a different subscription.
Yeah.
I had found a photo of Blaine at the time wearing a cowboy hat, standing kind of like in the front of a photo. And like behind him were these mobile chicken coops that we use. And I was just like, there's something so real and authentic about that right there. There's just like, all it was just a simple photo. And a lot of people would argue like, well, you need to come up with these really impressive video ads. And that was sort of the interpretation that the brothers had, was like, what do you mean you're going to just publish this photo of me? I was like, just give it a shot, man. So that became like the whole catalyst for why we were pushing so much heritage focused brands or heritage focused creative. And eventually led us to have this like gangbuster type video ad, which was I was a big fan of like single take videos. Yeah. Because again, the interpretation is that we're still a small farm, and we are in the grander scheme of really large farms, but we're a farm that's certainly developed a lot quicker than other farms have. Yeah. And in order to kind of facilitate that growth, we had to come up with creatives that felt homey and real, like your farmer would have filmed this and then put it on the internet and just hoped it worked, sort of scenario. But behind it, we're kind of like dissecting what's the message and how are we setting this up and who is it being delivered to, all in an effort to make it, again, still feel authentic, but drive conversions at the end of the day. So that was, if you ever go look at our ads library, there's a lot of ads you'll see that fit that motif.
Yeah, well, there's the one that's running currently with one of the brothers standing outside the Roanoke exit sign, right? It's what I like about it is the production values. I'm not going to say the production values are low because it's creative, but the time is spent on telling the story, not on let's make it look perfect, right? Yeah. And there's something that catches your attention about, oh, there's a guy standing on the side of the highway with a box of meat. You don't see that every day. So sure. I have to imagine that's strategic and intentional. And some of the video stuff is incredibly well done and high production values, or at least looks really great. I think it helps that the aesthetic of the farm is awesome. You pull up and there's the little country store, and it doesn't speak to the size of the business, but it sure is Instagrammable when you pull up there.
Yeah. No, that is the truth. And that was, so what I found through working with Seven Sons is that like my greatest marketing tool or marketing asset is the farm store, without a doubt. Like just the farm store is an ever living thing. I want it to be decorated during Christmas. I want us to have new stuff in the store. I want it to be very welcoming, because at the end of the day, it is like the first impression for people in Fort Wayne. It's also a perfect first impression for people online. Yeah. And then if you can draw that connection between like, how do I get my meat from you in Indiana if you have a farm store to my house in LA? It's like, well, I can ship it directly to you. So it is just like the perfect vessel for carrying the brand.
Yeah. So Greg, I keep interrupting you, so I'll stop talking for a second because this is so interesting to me. But how has your career evolved during your time at Seven Sons, and maybe where do you hope to go from here?
We're taking a quick break to talk about something that can truly impact your business: the power of public relations with Asher Agency. Imagine having a team of skilled communicators working tirelessly to shape your public image, build relationships with key stakeholders, and position your brand as a leader in your industry. That's exactly what Asher offers. Asher knows how to get your message heard by the right people at the right time. Visit AsherAgency.com for more info.
Yeah, so I was brought in. So when I left the agency, I was still strictly a media buyer. The goal was to, again, use the assets or work with people who are on the farm themselves to produce content that I can use on social ads. And at the same time, I was still managing Google ads. So we have search and shopping campaigns. This is funny because, like, again, I went from like a director of digital marketing, which covered basically everything under the gamut as far as digital went when I was at Cyclone, to moving more into just media buying and consultancy. And then when I got hired by Seven Sons, like, it became clear to me that like I can reassume some of the director of digital marketing responsibilities, which was like, all right, well, beyond just ads, what can I do in order to help improve overall conversion rate for first-time customers? And that has kind of evolved my position. I would say that I'm a growth marketer. Like at the end of the day, that's like my whole goal is like, I'm not a media buyer anymore. I'm not a web designer. I'm not a creative strategist. I'm whatever it takes to make conversions happen, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that kind of plays out over the time that I've been at Cyclone at Seven Sons, like what my projects look like. So I'm always still managing media. I'm managing where it's getting placed, how we're structuring our budgets. But then I'm taking on like, well, we need new product photography. And I know that that's important to first-time customers. I know I need to redo the home store. I need to improve our upsell pages. I need to improve the checkout experience. Yeah. I need to do all these things. We need to be reaching out to content creators and developing ambassador programs. So it's like all of these things evolve, and so does my career. Because truth be told, and that the role of a media buyer has kind of gone away. Because there's just so much more, and we'll talk about like AI and what that advent has done to this particular field.
Yeah.
But the more and more Google and Facebook and some of these larger platforms are trying to make it easier for all advertisers to get in on, and they're also at the same time removing a lot of the things that you wanted, like controls. So all of the targeting and things like that, especially when it comes to Facebook, is really done by the computer at this point. Like, so the focus now is for me to determine creative. It's like, how can we find better creatives? How can we find new personas and talk to those audiences and keep our ads relevant? So that's where I've pivoted from placing ads to doing everything under the sun to help conversion rate. And my role as a media buyer has certainly just kind of evolved into more of a analyst plus like a strategist, less so of like a traditional media buyer.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's sort of cyclical in that, let's see what the data tells us about what's working. Let's be strategic about what we're going to do next based on that. Let's focus on execution, not just turning the dials, but telling a story, and then repeat, which, is sort of marketing 101, but a lot of times people have a role in one of those things, but not all of those things. It's kind of great that you're involved throughout the whole cycle.
Yeah, it's nice to be involved throughout the entire cycle, just because sometimes it gets left up to other team members, or it's just a piece of your guys' marketing flow that doesn't get touched at all. So it's like, now that I have complete access to all of it, I'm eager to, even if it's something that I don't know really well, like if it's creating an ambassador program or reaching out to content creators, something like that, I was grateful to have someone at the agency who was typically doing that for me. I had like an account executive, right?
Yeah.
So again, once you go in-house, you get a little more exposure to everything, as opposed to like at the agency level where you have teams of people who help kind of do it all.
Yeah. And the way I've described it, because a million years ago, I was on the client side, the advantage of the agency side is variety. You have wide breadth, but very little depth in anything, because the minute you're working on one client, 2 minutes later, you're working on another. On the client side, it's a great amount of depth with less breadth, right? You're going to learn more about family farms than you ever thought you would. You're going to learn more about different facets of marketing than you would have if you were pigeonholed in one area. And it's not like one is better than the other. It's just, what point are you at in your career and where do you want to be? So sounds like you've made that transition pretty successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does, to your point, kind of allude to what did I want more of. And for me, it was I'm a big inquisitive person. I like asking the why. And at the agency level, you didn't have a lot of time to peel the onion back and kind of figure out what the root cause was, right? So, and that's just the nature of an agency. And to your point, like fast-paced agency life is honestly a lot of fun. You meet a lot of awesome people, and you have lots of exposure to many verticals and people. But time and pace slowed down dramatically for me. And it was kind of hard initially when I went in-house to figure out, like, what do I do with my time? Because I was a media buyer. And now I'm like, that was just one facet for one company. It's like, now what do I do? Yeah. So, it's been a big change in the speed of things. But it gives me so much more opportunity to dig into data. And I'm a big data person. Like that was part of the whole reason why I got into digital marketing, was because at the time you were still doing like cost per click, like manual bidding. And that was like that's such an archaic concept now.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, oh, I get to dig into this. And I at one point in time when people asked like what I do, I was like, well, I'm kind of like a financial advisor for people's investments with their business. Yeah. And like, that was fun to say, but now it's like, I mean, I do that for one client now, but that's sort of how it's all evolved. And it's fun to see.
Yeah, you're spending other people's money and trying to be as effective in that as you can so they make more money, right?
Right, exactly.
So, Greg, you've mentioned AI, and you're obviously very sophisticated and probably ahead of the curve when it comes to AI integration. Can you talk a little bit? I know this is an easy question to ask and a hard one to answer, but what are some of the specific ways you're integrating AI? What about it has been maybe better than you thought it was going to be? And where do you see any limitations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm like torn between AI. I see a lot of value in it because for me, it's like having access to the smartest person in the room at all times. Yeah. And not only is that person really intelligent, but they will listen to you ramble and they can put all of these random thoughts in together and make one cohesive concept. So I use it a lot in that regard when it comes to like what am I trying to figure out? What questions am I trying to ask about our business data? Like I'm looking at cohorts and trying to figure out like, are there gaps in when we're acquiring customers throughout the year? And how can I leverage, like we use ChatGPT. How can I use ChatGPT to be more of a strategic thought partner for me and less so like a replacement of certain things? I like to challenge it with questions. Sometimes I might be giving it my own bias and making it reaffirm things that I'm already considering. But it is like a great sounding board in that, like, I can ask it as if it were like a Harvard or Yale business professor. Like, can you tell me if this thinking is reasonable or logical? So I use it a lot in that regard. And that's probably where the buck kind of stops, is more or less there. Because of the nature of our brand, and just because I think that people will eventually long for things that aren't AI created because it just kind of feels demoralizing at a certain point. We don't use it for creative. Like we've actually worked with a partner before. Our most recent marketing agency partner was big on trying to leverage AI generated creative. And it's just so evident that it's not real. And it's like the uncanny valley. It's like, well, even this photo of Blaine, which for some reason AI generated, doesn't look authentic at all. So our big thing, to your point, you mentioned earlier, is like authenticity. And how can you reinforce authenticity? It's by not hiding yourself behind AI imagery and videography and things like that. So it has a place. Specifically, I don't like it in creative. But I have given it like when I'm redoing like my homepage and things like that. It's like, all right, obviously you're a really good copywriter, so how can you help me restructure this long sentence to something shorter or more tangible? It does great for that, but it's I hear this notion that we're going to like displace all of the creative minds in the space. I'm like, they'll still 100% exist because these things, people are going to hate it eventually. And there's just other pitfalls with it when it comes to creativity.
Well, it's regression of the mean, right? And you're speaking my language in a number of different ways. I mean, one of the things that I've said dozens of times, people at Asher are sick of me saying it, but AI works better in the background than in the foreground, right? For me and the work that I do, where I've found it to be most effective is help me automate, help me be more efficient, help me get out of the busy work so I can double down on the unique stories where nobody can duplicate it or nobody can duplicate my client's story. Let's focus on that and make that as real as we can using tools in the background that make it easier to spend time on that. And I genuinely believe companies like Seven Sons have an advantage in that you have a great story to tell. You have, your team isn't infinitely large. So you have some, pulls on your time if you can automate that and still get as good a result. And some of the stuff that's less critical to the brand story, you can automate some of that, and then let's double down on the stuff that nobody else can do. I think that's becoming more important. And I agree with what you're saying. I'm an old English major, so I have a bias, but I think good stories will always win. And if you try to automate that, you're going to fail. And the companies that have great stories and are willing to tell them in unique ways are the ones who are going to continue to do well, because that's what people want. So yeah, I think you're dead on there. I'll ask you another question. That the reward for answering a tough question well is another tough question. You and I have talked offline a little bit about education. And I mentioned that I'm teaching a class right now. And one of the challenges that we're dealing with in higher ed is, how do you help students understand why AI literacy is important and teach them AI literacy, while also being open to the fact that it's a very double-edged sword, as you and I have discussed, right? It's not all great. And alongside that, how do you make sure they're not outsourcing their learning to AI? Because I've seen some evidence of that. And how do you give them hope in an environment where they're hearing things like all white collar jobs are going to go away in 18 months, right? I know it's a big question, but when you think about educating the next generation about this field and AI and digital marketing and all of it, what comes out of the wash for you?
Yeah, I mean, I am grateful that I wasn't in college during this period of time where AI exists, because it really is like, it's like the easiest crutch to have. And I try to limit my exposure to it being like it making decisions for me in my own work. And I think that students should feel the same way. It's like there's nothing rewarding about cheating. There's really, I mean, if you have a tool that can do all of the work for you and you just regurgitate its answer, you did nothing to it. And it's like, you're not really, I mean, there has to be some feeling of wanting to self-promote and like be eager to learn in order for you to not fall into the trap of saying, let me just use what AI is telling me. So I feel like that's been huge for me as a student. And it's the reason why I've gotten to where I'm at today, is that I've just always been eager to ask why and take on challenges. And if I had an AI tool at the time, and this could be said for students, it could be said for anybody who was in my position 5 years ago, it would have made things easier. I wouldn't have second guessed myself nearly as much, because you can use that thing as, again, a sounding board to help validate your ideas. At the time, I was just kind of like, I hope I know what I'm doing best. And that was nice to have, because I was trusting my instincts. I wasn't the smartest person in the room, but I had a good feeling about what's happening. So people probably will rely less on their instincts and rely more on being told like what's true, or what the AI has learned across the internet to tell you what's true. So I would certainly try to encourage people to believe in yourself, be eager to learn, and use it as like I said earlier, the smartest person in the room. Like, they can answer a question way faster. And a lot of people will learn probably better through AI, honestly. Like, certain teachers probably won't be able to convey certain things to you as a student that like an AI could adapt to how you learn. And I think that it will in some ways help inform students. But again, to your point, man, there's a fine line between you just relying on it and you finding it as a resource. And it's tough. It's tough to see where you, as someone going into the workforce, like, how do you not rely on it? Because it could accelerate your career path by making you sound probably smarter than you are. But
you still need to back it up, right?
You do.
You know,
yeah.
It's like, that's why the subject matter knowledge is so important, because if you have the subject matter knowledge, you can shed more light on that by using AI to automate some of the stuff that doesn't need your unique subject matter knowledge. If you don't have the subject matter knowledge and you claim to have it, and use content creation tools to position yourself as an expert, all that's going to get exposed is the fact that you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So, it's real tempting to say, I'm going to skip the learning part and just be an expert, but that gets exposed really quickly.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate to have not had to like hire anybody or interview anybody with like that being the notion that like they're clearly reading from a prompter or something while I'm asking them a question. But I could see it certainly being a real life challenge, and that will be exposed quickly if you come nuts to bolts. You got to figure it out. And I'm not going to be the person who hovers over your shoulder to watch your work, but I want to make sure it's getting done and you know what you're saying. So yeah, makes sense.
No, I think that's great advice. Greg, I'm going to pivot to a few quick hit questions, things that maybe bring together some of the topics we've discussed. First one has to do with advice about what it takes to have a great career. So you've been in a couple different positions, you've grown in your current role. What do you think is most important for people to think about if they ultimately want to have a career where they're successful and fulfilled?
I would say, again, you just have to be naturally eager to whether it's to learn or to be introduced to new people, be a yes man. Like that's a big thing that I feel like will really get anybody further in their career in addition to your learning. I think that your learning is super important, but I also think that taking opportunities and having a little bit more, being a little more risk, not averse. What's the opposite of adversity? Being risk tolerant.
Yeah.
It's just to take those opportunities. Because I struggle with them, and everybody will kind of second guess themselves. You might have a little bit of what's that term where you doubt your capabilities.
Imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Imposter syndrome. I think that everybody will have that, and you will feel like it's a barrier. But at the end of the day, just take a leap of faith, a little bit of it. You can always kind of move back to where you were, but it's hard to. I mean, it's just that was my big thing. Like I just knew that there were opportunities, and I'm glad I took them. And I wouldn't shy away from. I will say this. I don't encourage a lot of people to do the 2-year job hopping thing, which I knew was really big between 2020 and 2024. I do think it's important to kind of settle down, learn about your business, and obviously still chase what's important to you, if it's money or whatever the case might be, or freedom, flexibility. But take your opportunities, get yourself out there, and be inquisitive. I think people love to hear that you're asking questions.
Yeah. Be willing to figure it out. If you wait until you're ready, you're never going to be ready. The other thing too, and I say this all the time too, is that if you have imposter syndrome, congratulations, that means you're a decent human being. But then you need to kind of get over it and say, hey, everyone who does this had to figure it out at some point. I just need to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of people getting kind of stuck in, I don't know how to do that, which means I'll never know how to do that, which absolutely isn't true. If that's true, I'd still be in Peabody, Massachusetts, failing out of college. So, everybody can figure it out. Greg, second quick hit question has to do with the work you do. And I'm looking for a myth or misconception that you want to debunk, or maybe something that's not appreciated enough that you want to amplify. Could be about digital marketing. It could be about marketing in general, could be about AI, could be about family farms, could be about Seven Sons. What's something people don't understand that you want to clear up?
Man, that's a big question. I feel like I wasn't really prepared for this one. What's a misconception? I would say, man, if I feel like it was at the time there was a misconception that marketing was just like social media, like you just had to kind of take photos and it all worked out. I will say that there's meaning in capturing the moment, but there's more meaning in why you're capturing the moment. And I don't want that to scare people off at all. I think that just kind of helps illustrate that you're thinking about things strategically. It's what's the purpose of what I'm doing? And what is it? How is this going to translate to something else? As if anybody watches this, if it's a college student or whoever, it's someone who's getting ready to interview for a new role. That's one of those things where if you're a creative person, how do you tie that back to business performance? Yes, you're talented at creating beautiful things, but what does this beautiful thing do for you and for the company? And maybe that's not a misconception. It's just that it's something that a lot of people have failed to draw the connection to, is what's your role and how is it impacting the business? And can you manage to tie those two things together with a number?
Yeah. I love that. And, the way I'll kind of reinterpret that, if you don't mind, is that people get into marketing often because they fall in love with the art of it, but it's really a science. It is. You need both. But it was more of an art when we didn't have ways of measuring what was working. Now it's become much more of a science. That's been true even in the course of my career. So I think it's good advice to remember that, the best looking creative doesn't do much unless it moves the needle in the right direction.
Great way to summarize it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more for you. What is a tool, a trick, a tip, a hack, something that you use that really helps you get the job done, something you think deserves a mention?
I learned this 4 years ago, and it's the only reason that I think Seven Sons decided to say this guy kind of knows what he's talking about, and it still holds true. There's this notion now more than ever, and it certainly is the case as you're scaling up your budget and you're needing to make your budget work more effectively for you, is that you need to test lots and lots of creatives. But there is if you're a media buyer or whoever, and maybe you want to find a clever way to reuse one ad, Instagram, Facebook, all these places that really heavily rely on commentary and reactions, the more and more of those you can get, the better your brand exposure becomes. It just helps with the social proof of everything. So if you're ever in the ad platform and you feel like, oh, I've got something that I really love, but I want to use it in other places, I'll give you a use example. You can create an ad, publish it, and you'll find it in the page post library. And then you take that ad ID and then you can just multiply it across multiple campaigns. And wherever it gets a like or a comment, it stacks. So now you have one ad that generates loads of engagement that you can just keep on copy and pasting into new areas. We've done this recently with a handful of things. It's the reason why if you see some of our ads, they have like over 20,000. One of our ads has like 50,000 plus likes on it with like close to 10,000 comments. It's because that ad, not only is that ad evergreen, that's a big concept that a lot of people should get around, is evergreen, but that evergreen ad can just build lots and lots of social proof. So that helps significantly. If you're a business owner looking to try and figure out how to do something like use this practically. I worked with Stepping Up Physical Therapy out of Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
And they had like an email nurturing system. And my whole goal was like, well, how can I make somebody who visits your website then see something that not only will they get through email, but reaffirm their belief that this is the right practice to go with, is that I'd taken that copy of that ad ID and then put it into an email flow. And then I just had all new patients who had an experience that they would give a 5, fill out or leave a comment on this particular post. So now this post that we're using retargeting is loaded up with commentary from past patients. So it's things like that. That's just one trick up the sleeve, and who knows how long it'll be relevant for. But that is a nice trick if you feel really confident about an ad creative. I would say that's a good one to try.
Well, I think between that and pay your farmer, not your pharmacist, you've given us some real good stuff here, Greg. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing it, especially at this busy time in your life. And thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.
And now, we'd love to hear from you. Is there a question you wish we had covered? Please let us know. You can reach out to us at hello@asheragency.com. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps others discover us as well. For more resources and updates, visit our website at asheragency.com. Thanks for listening.